Two civilians have been killed in Pakistani ceasefire violations in the Samba sector. This has taken the death toll to 3 just today. Pakistani forces resorted to ceasefire violations and unprovoked ceasefire violations along the international border in the Jammu-Kathua-Samba sector. Several people have already abandoned their homes, but in this ceasefire violation, 2 civilians were killed. 1 civilian had died earlier in mortar shelling. Army sources have told India today initial ceasefire violations were restricted to small arms, but later 120mm mortars were also used. India Today's Ashwini Kumar joins me with more on the story. Ashwini, what time did these ceasefire violations start? What's the latest?
Yes, Gaurav, this is a heavy shelling and firing from a line of control to international border, and 3 civilians were killed in Ramgarh area of Samba sector. And yesterday, our army soldier martyred in the Balakot area, and shelling and firing is still continuing in the same areas. There is a firing and shelling also in the Navshara area, and there is injury also. 4 people were injured there. The whole area, most of the except Poonch areas or part of the Poonch area, otherwise all sectors are active. That from Paharpur to Kathua to up to the Araspura area, all areas are active, and there is a continuous shelling and firing. Pakistanis are targeting our civilian people. There are 2 children were killed just now, and morning there was 1 girl, 19 years girl was also killed by the Pakistani shell. They are targeting our civilian population, and there is a hue and cry. There is terror in the villages all along the international border and line of control.
How is India responding to this? You're on ground zero. What are reports from across?
Gaurav, I am in the Rajouri, and I am just near the line of control, and I am hearing the sounds from our side. India is telling in a big way, and they are also responding to the Pakistani fire and the mortar shells. And there are reports that some of the Pakistani posts were destroyed, and we can see the smoke is coming from the Pakistani posts also, and there is a heavy damage to Pakistani area also. Yeah.
We are told that there's been an escalation. There's been an escalation in terms of the weapons that are being used, from small arms to medium machine guns to light mortars to 120mm mortars. In some instances, we are told that artillery is also being used. Is that true?
Yeah, Pakistani, as per the DG BSF KK Sharma also, that Pakistani Rangers are assisted by the Pakistani regular army, and some of the posts in the this Ranger post, some army, the regular army people have seen the way their firepower has increased. It shows that they have no such type of armed ammunition, but only Pakistani army can use. That means they are assisting them openly, and the DG BSF has already said that they are assisted by the Pakistani army. The way that they are using 120mm mortar shells on the civilian people, that is against the rule, and they are targeting our civilian population. Previously they were targeting our posts, but when there is nothing, they got nothing, and now they are targeting our civilian population. Yeah.
And that's the disaster, that Pakistan is targeting civilian areas, killing civilians. India is targeting Pakistani military posts in retaliatory fire, and those military posts, Ashwini, where infiltration takes place. That is punitive, that is justified. But Pakistani killing Indian civilians is completely unjustified, Ashwini.
Yeah, this is clear-cut violation by the Pakistanis, that they are targeting our civil population, and the 3 people killed within hours in the Samba sector, that is international border. And Ramgarh is a very calm place. There is a Baba Jamalial shrine also, which India and Pakistani people, they are worshipping them, and lakhs of people from Pakistan, they come to the border and they worship Baba Jamalial. That area is also targeted today, and there was a bullet there. They fall, and one of the 19-year girl was killed near the house of the Baba Jamalial Mela. So these things, Pakistan is responding to our areas, and they are targeting our civil areas.
Okay.
That, there is a fear in the all villages.
Ashwini, keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more. Pakistan's provocations at the international border and the line of control have intensified with 4 simultaneous attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistani forces began shelling early morning in Samba, Naushera, Balakot and Ranbir Singhpura sectors. Pakistani forces are now using heavy 120mm mortars along with small arms automatics 82mm. After taking lives of 8 Indian braves, the Pakistani army has now turned its eyes towards Indian civilians. Pakistani shelling and firing is directed to civilian areas. Jeda and Jad villages have been targeted in Samba. Basuni village is facing the brunt in Balakot. Multiple cases of injuries to civilians. 3 civilians, including a young 18-year-old girl, Rajinder Kaur, they've been killed in Pakistani shelling. Indian forces are hitting back. India Today's editor Shiv Arun joins me for more on this story. Shiv, Pakistan provocation targeting civilian areas, including killing this young 18-year-old girl.
Absolutely, Gaurav. 4 areas south of the Pir Panjal being specifically targeted by Pakistan's heavy weapons is what we are being told from by our reporters on the ground, as well as the army units and BSF units on the ground on the international border and the line of control in the Balakot sector, where civilian areas are specifically being targeted. As you rightly pointed out, India is retaliating only at Pakistan Army and Ranger posts, but the Pakistan Army posts are firing directly, firing 120mm shells, 82mm mortars, as well as small arms and medium machine guns at civilian areas where this 18-year-old girl was killed, in addition to 2 other civilians over the last 24 hours. None of the Indian Army units or BSF units are anywhere close to these civilian areas, so there is no question of it being, mistaken or misdirected fire. These are targeted attacks on Indian civilians, and it is very clear from the trend over the last 96 to 120 hours, last 4 to 5 days, that civilian areas and villages are being specifically targeted, especially areas that are currently being evacuated. Remember, India has wrought a huge amount of damage on the other side, stating that 6 to 7 Pakistan army units have been army posts have been completely destroyed in heavy retaliatory fire, especially in the Tangdar area and in the Machal sector as well. But now we're talking about the international border, the Chicken's Neck area, just north of the Jammu sector, including Rajouri, where civilian areas, a large number of border villages which are already on edge, are being specifically shelled by Pakistan units in an effort to create civilian casualties, and they are succeeding so far.
Shiv, what is India's response? What is India's response? Is Indian response restricted to targeting Pakistani posts? Because several times their soldiers abandon the posts and run to safety because they know India will not come into Pakistani occupied Kashmir. So what is India's response?
I can tell you that's a very good question. I can tell you, Gaurav, that it's very difficult for India, to retaliate in a very big measure. Even though we are firing back in a very strong way, the fact is Pakistan army units are sometimes embedded inside villages there, between civilian settlements, amongst civilians, in an effort to create, some kind of a human shield and create civilian casualties. That's the kind of heartlessness that the Pakistan military actually has, where it embeds itself within civilian settlements in an effort to make India fire at those civilian settlements. What I can tell you is that India's border units are much more discerning, much more careful about where they actually fire. 2 days ago, 7 Pakistani army posts were destroyed in the northern LOC area. Now we're talking about civilian settlements where these, this firing is actually coming from. So even though India is retaliating and there is an exchange of fire that's currently on, it is extremely difficult. I have this from my sources on the ground that it's extremely difficult. They have to have proper visual, optical and other intelligence before they create any kind of counter-attack, because there are Pakistani civilians on the other side where this firing is coming from, Gaurav.
One question to our government: are lives of Pakistani civilians more important than Indian civilians? I want to cut across from Ashwini Kumar now to Ashraf Wani, who joins us from north of Pir Panjal. And Ashraf, you've been going all across the LC intense operations, we are told, intense operations when it comes to preventing Pakistani terrorists from sneaking in just before the winter snow sets in. What's the latest?
Not only that, Gaurav, but also what inputs, concrete inputs with the Indian Army here in the Kashmir Valley are that SSG, the Special Service group of the Pakistani Army teams had been deployed on the line of control, on other side of line of control in POK, to carry out the BAT operations. We have seen two of them were tried, one in Tangdar, then another in Matsil, but so far that was responded equally with huge force by the Indian Army, and in which one action 4 army posts of Pakistan got destroyed in Karen sector, what she was mentioning. But so far those teams are there, and a threat is there also, and the army is equally equipped to handle these kinds of situations on the line of control in the Kashmir Valley. This is the season, as everyone is mentioning, and intelligence inputs are with that before getting the first snowfall, more and more infiltrators will be pushed in the Kashmir Valley to keep the boiling in the Kashmir Valley. Those attempts are on from the Pakistani side, but being the grid of the army here on the line of control so much enhanced and so much intact, it is very difficult for the infiltrators to get penetrated into the hinterland, into the villages of the Kashmir Valley. But the line of control is very active. It is very hot. So far, we have seen for last 3 days, there were exchanges of fire after a long time in Kashmir Valley on line of control. But the strategy here by the Pakistanis is different than what they are going and they are doing in the Jammu sector.
Stay with me for a moment, Ashraf, because we're just getting a reaction from DIG Rajouri Johnny Williams. He's told us about what civilians are now being told to go to safer areas because there is an apprehension that Pakistan could intensify its shelling in our area. Let's also tell you about India's response.
Intermittent firing going on at Mender sector and upper reaches like Balakot and Manjakot. There is heavy mortar firing and also small weapons. It keeps changing, but the population is scattered over there, but very vulnerable to this heavy mortar firing. The army and the BSF are on the frontiers, and we are looking after the logistics and other issues which the local administration can do. And we are trying to instill maximum confidence, and we have the infrastructure. There are places which are identified where they can go, and if it gets very critical, they can shift there and they'll be looked after.
Shiv Arun joining me with more about India's counter strategy. Shiv, when we look at this line of control, 776 kilometers long, but let's stay east of Zojila. Let's talk about what's happening on either side of Pir Panjal. The Indian artillery, we are told, is far superior to Pakistani artillery. The Indian deployment is far superior to Pakistani deployment. Then why is it that we see more casualties on our sides, or is it because information of Pakistani casualties is not filtering out at all?
That's absolutely correct, Gaurav. That is definitely one of the reasons. Information about Pakistan casualties, is usually lost in the fog of war. It's very difficult for the Indian Army or the BSF to capture material evidence of the destruction. Sometimes, in very rare cases, they have photographs. They've got local press reports or local TV reports, radio intercepts of any kind. But materially or tangibly speaking, it's very difficult to have absolute and explicit proof of the kills on the other side. On the other hand, Pakistan suppresses all information. Families are paid off. The press is suppressed. Information about deaths is always suppressed. They were able to deny a surgical strike, a cross-border raid. They've been able to deny Pakistan army posts being destroyed. They've been able to deny 15 Pakistan Rangers being killed in Indian retaliatory fire. So Pakistan is a masterclass in terms of suppressing information to make it look like that no damage has been wrought on them. On the other hand, in the Indian army, even though it is retaliating in a very big way, as officers who were speaking to India Today have been confirming here on national television, the fact is it is much more difficult for India to retaliate than for Pakistan to fire. Pakistan doesn't care what it fires at. Civilians, military, installations, buildings, hospitals, it doesn't matter. They will fire at any target that comes within range. For India, however, it has only been retaliating at Pakistan Army and Pakistan Ranger units, not at civilian settlements, certainly not at any vehicles taking away the wounded, which is something that Pakistan itself has done. Therefore, let's remember and let's remind ourselves this is a much more difficult task for India than it is for Pakistan because of the standards the Indian military sets for itself vis-a-vis Pakistan.
Okay, does India need to change rules of the game? That is the big question that we're asking here on India Today. Because from the information that is now emerging is that Pakistan is desperately seeking talks with India so that what's happening at the LC comes to an end. Indian Army is far more superior, but there's also a terror attack that is currently underway. Terrorists 2 to 3, perhaps Lashkar-e-Taiba, believed to be hiding in and around a village near Bandipora. Forces have reached this area. They've cordoned off the village. There was a gun battle on till some time back. I quickly want to cut across to my colleague Ashraf Vani for more on this. Ashraf, tell us more about the Bandipora encounter. The village had been surrounded. What's the latest?
Yeah, Gaurav, basically this is the Ajar village, which is half of the village is in the forest area and half of the village is in near the Bandipora. That was cordoned off on a specific information with security forces about the presence of 2 to 3 Lashkar militants in the area. Area was cordoned off early in the morning today. There was when the cordon was laid in the village, there was some firing from the militants towards the security forces, which was retaliated at that time. Then since then there is not any exchange of fire, and even some people believe that probably these militants have taken the advantage of the forest area and have fled from the scene. But so far, just now I spoke to some army people who are on the ground. They said that they have extended the cordon operation in the area and they will not allow these militants to flee. They may be hiding in the forest, but this operation will carry on till they will not find any clue about them. Basically, this is a kind of situation for the army here in the Kashmir Valley, where on Sunday also in same situation one encounter was initiated. Then there also in the night militants managed to flee. But there are inputs, regularly inputs. The movement of these freshly infiltrated militants from the Lashkar-e-Taiba is being tracked by the police as well as by the army, and probably it may take time, but these operations will be brought, and how much time they take, it is what the army says here in the Kashmir.